Audie Murphy, the most decorated man of World War II, who went on to become a movie star, was found dead this afternoon in the wreckage of a light plane in the hills.
This is Audie Murphy. He was one of the most decorated soldiers in American history. A man who, standing on a burning tank, held off an entire German infantry company. A legend, forged in the fires of World War II. A boy who went to hell and back, and returned a hero. On May 28, 1971, that legend fell from the sky. The official report tells a simple story: a small plane, a violent storm, a tragic pilot error. A private plane carrying Murphy and 5 others crashed into the side of a mountain in Virginia in conditions of rain, clouds, and fog. But that story, while factually accurate, is a dangerously incomplete version of the truth, because the real story of Audie Murphy's death isn't found in the wreckage on Brush Mountain. It's found on the ground, in the years of torment that preceded it. It's a story of huge gambling debts, of powerful enemies, of a mind ravaged by war, and of a nation that celebrated a hero, only to abandon the man. The official story hides a much darker truth. The real question isn't just how he died. It's why the man who single-handedly repelled a German assault was terrified to sleep in his own bed. The mystery of Audie Murphy is far worse than we thought, because it's not about a plane crash. It's about a man who was crashing for 25 years, and nobody seemed to notice until it was too late. To understand the tragedy, you have to understand the legend. And make no mistake, Audie Murphy was a legend. His story reads like a piece of fiction so grand, so unbelievable, that if Hollywood invented it, you'd call it propaganda. But it was real. Every last, terrifying piece of it. He was born into crushing poverty in rural Texas, the son of sharecroppers, one of 12 children in a family that knew hunger as a constant companion. His father drifted in and out of their lives before deserting them completely. From a young age, Audie became a hunter, not for sport, but for survival, using a rifle to put food on the table. He dropped out of school in the 5th grade to work picking cotton for $1 a day, a boy forced into manhood by circumstances that would break most adults. When his mother, the person he adored most, died in 1941, his world shattered. His younger siblings were sent to an orphanage, and the 16-year-old Audie Murphy was utterly alone, with nothing but a dream of escaping his life of dust and poverty. That escape, for him and for millions of other young men, had a name: World War II. But even the military didn't want him at first. Desperate to enlist after Pearl Harbor, he was rejected by the Marines for being too short and by the paratroopers for being underweight. At 5'5" and barely 110 pounds, he was a boy in every sense of the word. It took his older sister signing an affidavit to falsify his age before the Army finally accepted him on June 30, 1942. They wanted to make him a cook. He insisted on combat. It was a decision that would change the course of American military history. Shipped overseas to the 3rd Infantry Division, he first saw combat in Sicily in 1943. What followed was a campaign of such sustained, almost suicidal bravery that it defies belief. Through 8 major campaigns across Italy, France, and Germany, Murphy became a force of nature on the battlefield. He didn't just fight, he dominated. In Italy, he advanced alone on a machine gun nest, killing its crew. At the Anzio beachhead, a place of brutal, unrelenting slaughter, he took out a German tank with rifle grenades. It was there his comrades would later say something shifted. The fear that paralyzes most men seemed to have been burned out of him, replaced by a cold, lethal calm. But the moment that truly forged the legend, and perhaps broke the man, came in southern France. After German soldiers faked a surrender and killed his best friend, Murphy snapped. In a singular act of vengeful fury, he single-handedly charged the German machine gun position, killing the men who killed his friend, then used their own weapon to systematically wipe out several other nearby German positions. It wasn't about tactics anymore. It was personal. It was grief channeled into unimaginable violence. He earned decoration after decoration: the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars. He was wounded 3 times, earning 3 Purple Hearts. He contracted malaria. By January 1945, he had spent some 400 days on the front lines. He wasn't even 21 years old, and then came Holzwhir. On January 26, 1945, in France, the legend of Audie Murphy became immortal. His company was attacked by 6 German panzer tanks and waves of infantry. Murphy ordered his men to fall back. But he stayed. He remained at his command post, a lone figure calling in artillery strikes. Behind him, an American tank destroyer was hit and burst into flames. Its crew abandoned ship. It was a death trap, loaded with fuel and ammo, a ticking bomb. Any sane person would have run. Audie Murphy climbed on top of it while the tank destroyer burned beneath him, threatening to explode at any second. Murphy grabbed its .50 caliber machine gun and turned it on the enemy. For over an hour, completely exposed, he held his ground. He was a one-man army. German infantry got to within 10 yards before being cut down. He single-handedly killed or wounded an estimated 50 German soldiers, stalling their entire assault. He only stopped when he ran out of ammunition. Wounded in the leg, he climbed off the burning vehicle, and just as he walked away, it exploded. He didn't flinch. Refusing medical attention, he regrouped his men and led a successful counterattack. For these actions, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, America's highest award for valor. He became the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II, receiving every combat award for valor the U.S. Army had to give, plus medals from France and Belgium. The sharecropper's son, who was too small to be a Marine, had become a giant. His face was on the cover of Life magazine. He was a national hero. The war was over. But his real battle, the one that would ultimately claim his life, had just begun. When Audie Murphy came home in 1945, America was desperate for a hero. They needed a symbol of victory, a clean story of good triumphing over evil. In the baby-faced, soft-spoken Texan, they found their perfect icon. Hollywood came calling, with actor James Cagney himself sponsoring Murphy's move to California. Universal Studios signed him, and he was thrust into the spotlight, but the heroic image was a carefully constructed fantasy. Behind the accolades was a profoundly broken man. The war hadn't ended for Audie Murphy, he'd simply brought it home with him. He was suffering from what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. And Audie Murphy had one of the most severe cases imaginable. The horrors he'd witnessed and participated in left deep, invisible wounds. The nights were the worst. He was plagued by horrific nightmares and crippling insomnia. The man who had faced down German tanks couldn't face his own bedroom without terror. He began sleeping with a loaded pistol under his pillow, a habit he kept for the rest of his life. His first wife, actress Wanda Hendricks, later described how he would wake up screaming, sometimes holding her at gunpoint during violent flashbacks. Their marriage quickly disintegrated. In an era when mental health was taboo, there was no support system. The government that had trained him to kill had no programs to teach him how to live. To cope, he became addicted to a powerful sleeping pill called Placidil. But in a display of that same iron will, he eventually recognized the addiction was destroying him. In the mid-1960s, he locked himself in a motel room for a week and forced himself through a brutal withdrawal, cold turkey. He became one of the first public figures to speak out about the psychological cost of war, calling on the U.S. government to provide better mental health care for veterans. He was decades ahead of his time. America wanted to celebrate the hero, but it didn't want to hear about the man's pain. His professional life was just as turbulent. He starred in over 40 films, mostly westerns, and even played himself in the blockbuster adaptation of his autobiography, To Hell and Back. But he was never truly comfortable in Hollywood. He knew his war record was being exploited for box office returns. This inner turmoil manifested in self-destructive behavior, especially with money. He was a notoriously reckless gambler. High-stakes poker games, horse racing, he chased the adrenaline rush of combat. One friend estimated he lost as much as $3 million through gambling. He poured money into disastrous business ventures and was generous to a fault. By the late 1960s, the hero was broke. In 1968, he declared bankruptcy, hounded by the IRS. He was offered lucrative deals for alcohol and cigarette ads, money that could have solved his problems. He refused. He didn't want to set a bad example, but his gambling debts were different. They weren't just financial problems, they were dangerous ones. His addiction led him into the orbit of organized crime figures and loan sharks. This is where the story turns darker. This was about a man in over his head, entangled with violent people. Friends reported that in his final years, Murphy was often paranoid and afraid, telling people he was being watched. The hero who had survived World War II was now a broken man haunted by his past, drowning in debt, and surrounded by predators. This was the man who, on May 28, 1971, boarded a small private plane for a last-ditch business deal. The Audie Murphy who fell from the sky was not the shining hero from the cover of Life. He was a man at the end of his rope. The final chapter of Audie Murphy's life was a frantic scramble. By the spring of 1971, the financial pressure was suffocating. Bankrupt and deeply in debt, he was chasing a lifeline he believed could pull him back from the brink. The trip was to Martinsville, Virginia. Murphy and a group of business associates were flying from Atlanta to meet with investors for a company making prefabricated houses. For Murphy, it was a high-stakes, last-ditch effort. The trip was so secret that even his own family was reportedly unaware of the details. The aircraft was a twin-engine Aero Commander 680, and at the controls was a pilot named Herman Butler. This is the first of many red flags. Butler was a private pilot, but crucially, he was not instrument-rated. This meant he was legally unqualified to fly in clouds, fog, or heavy rain. He had to be able to see where he was going. The weather forecast that day was treacherous, with the route taking them right over the Appalachian Mountains. Rain, low clouds, thick fog, and zero visibility were predicted. Exactly the instrument-only conditions Butler couldn't handle. They departed from Atlanta at 9:10 a.m. Butler didn't file a flight plan, another major break from standard procedure. At 11:49 a.m., he radioed the FAA station in Roanoke, Virginia. The controller gave him the weather, visibility just 3 miles and light rain and fog. And then, the chilling warning, the mountain ridges were obscured. This was the moment of decision. An instrument-rated pilot would have used their instruments. A VFR-only pilot, hearing that the mountains were invisible, should have turned back immediately. Instead, Butler said he was continuing. It was a fatal choice. Eyewitnesses on the ground reported seeing the plane circling erratically near Galax, Virginia. At one point, the pilot made a desperate, failed attempt to land on a 4-lane highway, a clear sign he was lost and in trouble. But instead of putting the plane down, he took off again, flying deeper into the storm. At approximately 12:08 p.m., the flight ended. Flying at high speed through thick fog, the Aero Commander slammed into the side of Brush Mountain. All 6 men aboard were killed instantly. Because there was no flight plan, the search was disorganized. The wreckage wasn't found for 3 days. The official investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, was swift. The final report in 1972 blamed the pilot. The probable cause was his attempt to continue visual flight into adverse weather conditions at an altitude too low to clear the mountainous terrain. In short, pilot error. Case closed, but the story was anything but straightforward. The real question wasn't what happened, but why. Why would a pilot fly directly into a storm he'd been warned about? Why was Murphy, a man with keen survival instincts, on that plane, pushing forward? The official report explained the mechanics of the crash, but it completely ignored the desperation that had pushed Audie Murphy onto that plane in the first place. The story of Audie Murphy is a chilling reminder of how we treat our heroes. It's a complex web of bravery, trauma, and systemic failure. We're committed to exploring these difficult historical truths. If you believe these stories need to be told, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. Your support allows us to continue this work. Now, let's get back to the dark truth behind the official story. The official story of pilot error is entirely plausible. But to accept it as the final word is to ignore the man himself. Immediately, questions hardened into conspiracy theories. Some claimed Murphy was murdered by the mob. They pointed to his massive gambling debts and his known associations with criminals. Had his luck finally run out? Did he owe the wrong people money? The secrecy of the trip and Murphy's own paranoia fed this narrative. He'd told friends he feared for his life. Was it PTSD, or the rational fear of a man who knew he was a target? Others whispered of sabotage. His widow, Pamela, and his 2 sons never fully accepted the official story. They filed a $10 million lawsuit for negligence. In 1975, a jury awarded them $2.5 million in damages from the plane's owner. This legal victory wasn't proof of a conspiracy, but it did establish civil liability for the negligence that led to the crash. But here is the real, dark truth. The mystery of Audie Murphy is worse than we thought, not because there's proof he was murdered, but because his life had fallen so far that his death could have been a mob hit or a tragic accident, and both scenarios felt plausible to many. That is the real scandal. The true tragedy isn't the crash itself. The crash was merely the conclusion. The tragedy is the 25 years of decline that preceded it. The tragedy is that one of America's most decorated soldiers died broke, addicted to pills, plagued by demons, and entangled with criminals. We, as a nation, built a monument to the hero but abandoned the man. We put him on a pedestal and then walked away, leaving him to fight his longest war completely alone. We used his image for inspiration and his story for entertainment. Yet, when he spoke out about the invisible wounds of PTSD, we didn't listen. When he spiraled into financial ruin, we did nothing. We created the myth of Audie Murphy, the perfect soldier, and in doing so, we erased the reality of Audie Murphy, the suffering human being. The real mystery isn't how he died, it's how we let him. How did a man who sacrificed everything for his country end up so desperate that he would get on a shoddy plane with an unqualified pilot in a violent storm, chasing one last deal? The system that made him a soldier utterly failed to care for him as a veteran. On June 7, 1971, Audie Murphy was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. His grave is one of the most visited in the cemetery. But per his own request, his headstone is not a grand monument. It is a simple, standard-issue stone, identical to that of any other soldier. It makes no mention of his fame, his movies, or the legend. In the end, he was just a soldier. A soldier who came home from war but never truly found peace. And that is the worst, most undeniable truth of all. The questions surrounding Audie Murphy's death may never be fully answered. Was it a straightforward accident, or was it something more? What do you believe is the darkest part of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you found this investigation valuable, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. Thank you for watching.